guys. That was a good one. So, naturally, one of the things that you guys have probably seen is with the spectral chests, you can get a number of reward counts for doing this. Now, you may be wondering, how do I have 25 of these? So, if you go over to the family shop and go to the very bottom, there is an option now to buy spectral keys. You can buy 99 of these for 500 a pop. So if you didn't already know how to do that, you can pick those up and then go through Magic Theater and get some extra loot. The other detail that I thought would be kind of worth mentioning is, as far as what you can do in the Abyssal Portal, you always want to pay attention to whatever the Hellhound is at this particular time. So like right now, it takes more skill damage. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you the process that I go through. But basically, if you're aware of like, okay, I need to do skill damage, you can kick on to Star Array. And then as far as your build goes, you want to think in terms of whatever's going to give you skill damage. So in this case, you want to go into the Sork tree, and you're more than likely going to pick this up. And then here you'll probably pick up this as well. And then you'll probably dump most, if not all, of your stats into skill damage on both tabs. And then from here on out, you just want to look at upgrading the attack on all the trees up till 10. Okay. And when you've gotten the attack up to 10 on each tree, then you want to do their sub-trees and do those up to 10. Now, why we do this is so we can maximize the amount of core stats that we get, is the reasoning behind this. And it's not important really what class you are. Yes, you can be super efficient, turn into a mage if you want to. Now, like there, I went to 11. That's fine. We'll just go ahead and do 11 on these now. And I'll just steadily increase them. But because I already know that I can do it, I'm going to go up to 20 on all of the major trees. Mainly because I know that I can get away with it. I know I have enough. Now, if you didn't know, what you would do is just go round robin with it, basically, and work on increasing these trees all the way up. And you would want to improve that attack stat as much as you can. And with the idea in mind that, you're going to get the maximum amount possible. Now, something in the Sork tree that is kind of often forgot about is skill crit, and you can dump some of that into skill crit and get it up to like 15 if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you how you want to handle that. And then with what's left over, we'll just go ahead and dump that in. There we go. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and grab this too. I know. But the main thing is once you've done that, then the only other place where you can make these kind of adjustments are going to be in the enchantments. So in this case, I just happen to have an enchanted version. I can just swap the combo out, get a pair there. And if I swap this out for that, and I believe... I don't yet have it. Okay, well in that case, it's not really that big of a deal. But what you would want to pay attention for is anything or everything that increases skill damage, which at this time, I do have a red elemental skill wrath that I could use. So if I replace that and then just dumped everything from red into it, that's going to give me like 240% skill damage. Okay. And then from there, as far as skill damage goes, I don't particularly need the Castle Calandrum, so we'll probably leave it on just because it basically gives you attack in the form of health back. And as far as this is concerned, what the fuck? So we'll go in here and we'll just change our mount over to the Cloud Drifter for that skill crit and skill damage. And then for the actual morph itself, you have a couple of different choices as far as morphs go. We'll use the Fallen Angel in this case, though, because I don't see any harm in that. And then what we'll do is we'll take basically all of our health out and all of our combo out. And then our skill damage, we'll dump almost all of it into this. We're going to aim for about 300% is what we're aiming for here. Yeah, which is pretty close. Okay. And then from that point forward, what you'll do is you'll turn around and go and swap out your pals. And you're going to take out pretty much all of these. Except I like to leave a beta on. And then you'll throw in Davi. And you want the Hydra Sprite. You'll want the Fiery Tail. And then if you got the new Sprite Fox, you can throw the Sprite Fox on. Alternatively, you can also get the Treasure Dragon applied instead of the Hydra Sprite if you want. And it may make more sense if you're not a mage to just go about it this way. Okay. And then once you've done that, then you can, if you already have, so like in my case, I already have something that's going to give me some skill crit, but you could alternatively put in like a mage based, if you already have an avian built for that, you can just upgrade that avian all the way for your skill damage. And then about the only other place you can go in here is adjust, is go to basic attack, change that to a skill seal. And I like to try and keep these two even. You want global attack as much as you can. Then on the prayer statue, you want to switch this over to global attack. And when you've done that, and you've done all of what I've suggested so far, then you should be able to uptick quite a bit of damage. Just from the standpoint of the skill damage that you're going to have. So in this case, I mean, one of the downsides to this particular idea is that obviously you are going to be capped by the amount of damage that you're going to be able to do, purely because of the amount of health you have available to you. You know, but like in this case, I bet really about the only thing you can do is you can increase your skill crit. So like here at 42, I could have probably gone over here and kicked on skill crit, and then I don't know, you know, if you wanted to poke around, you could probably adjust here. You could, well, I don't really think there's anything in there you could adjust, but you could have conceivably thrown, like, instead of say blitz, do the draconic, and then on the skills side of things, you could conceivably, instead of doing like clone strike, you could have thrown in like the crimson cloud, and you know, something like this for example, when put under some stress, I mean, yeah, it's 1800% skill damage with, you know, in this case 2000 attack bonus, so you're really heavy on the amount of skill crit and skill damage that you're doing. And about the only thing really that you can do to like hyper max this in any way whatsoever is you could, you know, conceivably switch out your build, go and evolve, and you would want to go down the mage path. And then the question of, you know, do you go healer or spellcaster is going to be a question of like, if you're wanting to pop shields, you'll go healer. It's better for PvP. But if you're wanting to do like just pure skill crit damage, I can show you. I've had a lot of people ask me like, okay, but what if I want to go down this path? How do I make this work? And there is a way to make this work. Like, it's not that it's a totally trash build by any means. It's just not the one that people would suggest to go to. And again, you know, making sure you got the skill seal, because I don't know what it is about swapping classes, it switches that out. But when you've done so, you could conceivably dump some of the skill crit damage here if you wanted to, instead of dumping it all into wildlife or wildfire piercer. In which case, instead of trying to go for like a straight, you know, crazy amount, what you'll do is you'll bring this up to like probably about 40 or so, and then bring this up to 40. And this is where, you know, you're kind of appealing to two different ways of approaching this problem. So you get this up to like, it looks like probably 50, and then I can probably bring this up to 50 almost. And what you do is you trade off a little bit of two of your major stats there. But the idea being that if you skill crit more, which you will, you're going to do 350% skill crit damage, and then you've already got 63% on top of that. And because your talents are now already tweaked in such a way that you're going to fire successive casts more frequently, and as a result, you're also going to have skill damage. The only thing I would suggest is you probably want to increase your active skill energy regen. In which case, if you do decide to do that, you may decide that, maybe a Baden is just not worthwhile for you. And in which case, you can throw something like Hydrosprite on there. And that's just going to make it so that you fire your skills off more frequently, which as a mage, you're going to need to be able to really make this work for you. And more than anything, I mean, one of the downsides of using this particular avian is just because I have it doesn't necessarily make it the best in slot for this. Like, if anything, if I'm wanting to do something like that, what I'll probably lean towards is more like, you want to look for specific combinations. Mainly skill crit damage wherever you can get it. So, like, out of all the ones I have so far, that one looks like the most appealing. Because what this is going to do is increase your energy regen, and then it's going to give you some skill crit, which you pretty much need in order to be able to deal more damage. And you could, considering that you have between Dunce Cloud to choose from, you could also just as easily decide that, maybe that's just not what you need. Now, I've seen people kind of play around with this in different ways, but instead of doing like Gleam Candle, which is what I think a lot of people start off with, you could consider going to Pumpkin Witch and do kind of the same. You always want to look for the right combinations, though, and the main thing for this is, we don't have the right combinations on their Pumpkin Witches yet, so while I do have 10% there and like 150, this Quick But Dull is kind of taking away from it, so we're not going to use any of those, and that's, unfortunate, but that's about the only other thing we can tweak. Now, if you put this in practice, and let's say you actually go into PvP now, and let's say you decide that you're going to be a mage, and this is the way you're going to go about it, you'll notice that almost immediately, it just doesn't work. And it's unfortunate because I feel like the candlestick is only going to get you so far. Not to mention the fact that, like here, it could be potentially even better if I would have used something that was, maybe in pro favor of maybe increasing that skill crit damage more than what it already is. And you can switch it over completely like this, and by doing that, you're giving yourself a stupid amount of damage. The only downside I find with this particular artifact is the Castle Colonne de Lebrun makes you really susceptible to like damage loss over time because of all that HP that it provides you. In which case, you may wind up finding yourself either wanting to use something more like the Flaming Carnage, for example, or Eye of the Raven would be a really great piece to have if you're a mage, I think. But like in this particular instance, because my crit rate's so low, that's not really going to do me any justice. I mean, really about all I got going for me here is the skill damage and skill crit. With it being around 60%, it's by far not the most ideal heavy tanky build that it could be. And, for that reason, you could, like, say, like, and maybe instead of going all skill crit, like I was showing you, you can dump all of this over into HP. Give yourself a really high regen. So bring this up to, like, 40, maybe bring this up to probably about 20-ish, maybe 25, 30. We'll see how far we can go. Okay, so, like, 34. You could sacrifice that skill crit in the form of HP, and that's going to bring up your defense stats up a hair, but enough that, rather than being strongly one or the other, of course, one thing I would say is you would probably want to wear more like a regen set. And so you'll see that now, rather than trying to fire off combos, the regen set that I have on is going to increase the amount of regeneration we have, which is going to help with your survivability. And yeah, I mean, it's a little tweak in that direction, but it's enough to make it possible for you to be able to really work through like the amount of damage that you want to achieve. If anything, I can use probably double-edged string in this case, actually, because this will make it so that your AoEs are going to fire off a little bit more often. And that may be more advantageous here, actually. We can kind of see how it plays out. And still, you can kind of see how, like, between a build like this and the other, the biggest problem is you need life. You need tankiness. You need health. And that's one of the biggest struggles this build has. So we may just take the active skill regen out. We'll throw in, like, the panda, for example. And then we'll probably need to go in here and tweak our skills. So maybe instead of doing blade pierce, we're going to throw in, like, say, like, I would say probably nature's renewal. And maybe instead of blitz assault, maybe we throw in, like, you can either do one of two things. You can either stun them, which will help ever so slightly, or you could pop a shield and just do a combination of these two. And all that's going to do is make it so that you do have a little bit of survivability. And it's not enough for it to really matter. I mean, especially when you go into PvP. Like, so, like, for example, let me just, this is my PvE set. We'll just go into gear plan here. We'll change it so we're using the PvE set for a little bit while we're in arena. And I can kind of show you what I'm getting at here. So, like, I'll have to go against some small players, which is no biggie. But the biggest thing with a mage is that the shock value of the amount of damage they do is really kind of the singing high point. Like, right there, if it was going to work, it should have killed him, like, right then and there. And it's just not doing it. And that's kind of the problem I often find if I run a mage class, is that you need so much damage to be able to make it worthwhile that sometimes it just doesn't fire soon enough to do you any justice. Really about the only other thing you can tweak in here is probably, I've seen this done before, at least in the talents. But one thing that I wonder is if we switch to using Alien Dimension as opposed to the Fallen Wing, all that's going to do is make us start off a lot faster rather than really slow in the beginning, which is probably enough to push it in our direction. Like, it'll more than likely work better that way. Just because the Fallen Angel is such a huge debuff. It's one of those items that you want to use if you're tanking. It's not so great in PvP, though, because you find yourself needing the opposite. You need, like, a lot in the beginning. I think, if anything, if you go super heavy mage, then, that's kind of the direction that you end up following in. And there are different ways to skin this cat. Like, the way that I'm showing you how to do this, you can, instead of, like, going full shield and heals, I've seen just as many people throw, like, a stun set on. And then what they'll do is they'll go into their relics here. Rather go for they'll go for the time statue. And then here obviously that wouldn't really do you any good anyway, but I'll go back here, turn this panda on, and then just do the exact same thing. So anyway, it wasn't even that efficient earlier anyways. But the way this gets approached, you can see that works okay. Let's try to go against somebody that's like 72k, like earlier. Like, it just makes it work a little bit better. Just because you're able to slow them down. But that's assuming, of course, you're able to do all the damage that you need to do right from the start. Because all the stuns are going to do is delay the inevitable. And so unless you're able to do a stupid amount of damage right from the start, it just doesn't work out a lot of the time. Because what Star Array will do for you is it increases based on the amount of skill crit rate. And it'll increase the amount of skilled crit damage that you're doing. So really, I mean, if you want to min-max this any further than what I've already done, I'd say you could probably, I don't know, like, if, for example, if I wanted to min-max this, I could take away the defense stat and dump this over into skill crit and leave it into HP instead. And we can try that and see if that would help. Because sometimes you can get away with that. Not always, but... And again, it's just one of those things that I like to kind of play around with. It's like there, we just didn't do it. Now, funny enough, right? I mean, right now I'm just throwing, the Cloud Drifter. But if I was to use, like, Cheetah Zero, which I still think is one of the most broken mounts in the game, right? Do the same exact thing, but use Cheetah Zero. Cheetah Zero just allows you to get away with things that you really shouldn't be able to get away with. Like, that guy wasn't so big. Let's try Zasco, because Zasco was an example of somebody that we weren't able to kill, I don't think, right from the get-go. So, like, here, like, I win based on the technicality. You know, so it's like, it's definitely one of those things. Now, like, here, this is Beachy. Beachy's kind of an example of somebody that, like, this is what the high end looks like. It's just absolutely bonkers. And what they can do, it's ridiculous, right? Like, that's a crazy amount. But you can kind of see how, like, their strategies are all different. Like, Zarbon's blitz, burn. The other ones just flack massive amounts of damage at you and just knock you out in a one-shot type build, you know? And there's a way to go about it. Well, like, even here, you can see how that should have killed me. I should have lost. But because I had Cheetah Zero, it makes all of the difference. In any case, guys, that's pretty much the Darklord side of things, in case you were wondering.